I am writing this without any plan for it to be read. I am writing because the sequence of events needs to exist somewhere outside the official logs, and the forms at the office do not allow notes without boxes. The clock on the wall shows 3:14 as I start this page. Wind from the west carries the smell of wet pine through the narrow window of the tower. I work alone at a fire lookout tower in the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana. The name of the tower is not important. Its location exists on a forestry map as a set of coordinates that do not stay in memory. The access road is compacted dirt that changes color after rain. There are no other structures within walking distance. I am writing because of a small inconsistency, not an incident, not something that can be pointed at and named, just a detail that keeps appearing in the same place, at the same hour, in the same way. At first, I assumed it was a logging error. Every morning I wake before sunlight reaches the ridgeline. I record temperature, humidity, wind direction, and visibility. I check the VHF radio and note traffic from other towers. I make coffee on a small propane stove, whose sound drops a half tone each week. The routine is designed to leave no space for interpretation. On the first day of the season, I recorded visibility at 20 miles to the south. No smoke, no haze. Clear sky with thin cloud bands moving slow. I wrote it using the same pen I used last year. My handwriting was even. The spacing was consistent. In the afternoon, I received a radio call from the tower north of me. We exchanged weather confirmations. The conversation ended with a clean click. No interference. I closed the daily log and placed it in the drawer. That night, when I opened the drawer to retrieve my flashlight, I saw an additional line written on that day's page. The handwriting resembled mine, but did not match. The slant was different. The line listed a timestamp of 9:40 p.m. and a short note about visibility shifting. There was no initial. I assumed I forgot. I crossed out the line with a single thin stroke and added my initials beside it. I did not report it. Things like that do not need to be shared. The next morning followed the same routine. I logged the data. I checked the radio. I swept the wooden floor that stayed dusty even when the door stayed closed. There were no fire signals in my sector, no helicopter traffic. That afternoon, I opened the log and found 2 new lines. The times were different. Both lines described the same condition using slightly altered wording. One listed a wind direction that did not match the small flag mounted outside the window. I checked the flag. The cloth moved exactly as it had in the morning. I did not cross out those lines. I closed the log and put it back. I made a separate note in my pocket notebook. That notebook stays with me at all times, including the small restroom behind the tower. On the 3rd day, the radio powered on without a call. There was no voice behind the thin static. I waited until the indicator light went dark. When I checked the log, there was a line stamped with the same minute the radio activated. The sentence read, "Confirmation received." I checked the frequency history. There was no recorded incoming transmission. I ran through the equipment check procedure again. Everything registered normal. This tower was built during a period when wood was chosen because it was cheap and easy to replace. The floorboards produce distinct sounds at specific points. I know them. At night, those sounds remain because of temperature change. I can tell which come from the structure and which come from the wind. On the 4th night, there was another sound, Not loud, not repeated, like a step placed where it did not belong. I stood and walked the perimeter of the room too isolated. I found nothing. When I returned to the desk, the daily log was open to a blank page. The date for the next day was written at the top. I closed the book and locked it in the drawer. I kept the key in my pocket. I stayed awake until the clock reached the same time as the additional entries from previous nights. Nothing else occurred. The radio remained silent. The next morning, I reported a brief radio irregularity to my supervisor. I did not mention the log. The supervisor recorded my note and suggested an antenna check during the scheduled maintenance visit. The visit was listed for 2 weeks out. Routine resumed. I logged weather. I heated canned food. I cleaned the binocular lenses. In the distance, the hiking trail remained empty. No vehicles appeared on the dirt road. That afternoon, I opened the locked drawer. The daily log was inside. The key had not left my pocket. On that day's page, there was one line with initials resembling mine. The handwriting was cleaner than usual. The line did not reference weather. It documented my position inside the tower at a specific time. The description was accurate. I closed the book and moved it to the highest shelf. I am writing all of this now because the order matters. If this record stops mid-sentence, then there was a portion I did not manage to copy. This tower has rules. The door stays closed at night. The radio stays off unless called. The log is filled once per day. The rules exist so small, deviations do not expand. I am still following those rules. By the 7th night, I stopped using the propane stove. The hum of its burner had dropped a half tone every week, until it sounded less like a machine and more like a human wheezing for breath. Up here, in this box of wood and glass, silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is a frequency that presses against your eardrums until you start to hear your own heartbeat as a rhythmic knock on the door. At 2 a.m., the valley fog crawled upward, swallowing the tower's stairs, rung by rung, until I was floating in a white void. I opened the locked drawer again. The logbook was not closed this time. It was open to a page 2 days into the future. In the corner of the page, a symbol was drawn in jagged black ink. It was circular, with lines resembling wings, broken at unnatural angles. Below it, a sentence was written in my neatest handwriting, the kind of script I only use for official reports. Do not count the dead trees on the north slope. They are shifting places. I never wrote that. I didn't even understand what it meant. But governed by an impulse I couldn't control, I grabbed my binoculars and aimed them at the north ridge. Under the pale, sickly moonlight, I saw them. The skeletal pines, charred by lightning strikes a year ago. They were no longer where I remembered. They had migrated hundreds of yards. They were closer to the base of the tower now. Much closer. Suddenly, the VHF radio crackled to life. No indicator lights flickered. No power was running to the unit. Yet, a voice emerged from the dusty speaker, heavy, gravelly, carrying the thick, rhythmic accent of the ancient Salish tongue I had heard only once at the reservation down in the valley. "Elias," the voice whispered, vibrating the very marrow of my bones. "This land has a memory, and you are treading on its wound. Stop writing. If you give them a name, they will own you." The radio began reciting names. Names of the people who had vanished in the Bitterroot Mountains over the last 50 years. Names erased from history by the tribal elders. Names that David Paulides' books never dared to mention. Then the sound returned. Creak. The floorboards directly behind my chair groaned under an immense localized weight. I could smell it now. A suffocating mixture of wet earth, rotting fur, and something sickly sweet, like funeral lilies left to decay in the sun. I did not turn around. Rule number 1 in the high country: never turn around when you are alone in a tower and you feel someone standing inches behind your neck. With trembling hands, I reached for the logbook. I had to know. If this book was how they communicated, I would use it. I wrote a single question in red ink. What do you want? I closed the book, counted to 10, and forced it open. The answer appeared instantly. Not in ink, but in deep, violent gouges that tore through the paper and into the heavy oak of the desk. Open the door. We are cold. The wind outside died instantly. The fog on the glass windows began to form the shape of massive human palms, oily, translucent prints, as if something gargantuan was hugging the tower from the outside, trying to feel the heat of my body through the thin wooden walls. I am still following the rules. The door remains locked. But I realize now, the rules of this mountain weren't written to protect me. They were written to keep me in one place, long enough for them to find a way in. At 4:50 a.m., I decided to break the final rule. I abandoned my post. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't turn off the tower lights. I simply ran. I scrambled down those wooden stairs through a fog that now smelled of wet earth and open graves. I didn't look back. I knew that if I glanced at the tower's windows, I would see another version of myself. A version without bones, sitting in that chair, writing in the log, with a hand that didn't belong to me. I pushed my old truck down the Bitterroot dirt roads as fast as the engine would scream. I hit dry branches that snapped like ribs under my tires. When the sun finally touched the horizon, I crossed the national park boundary. I didn't stop at the headquarters. I didn't hand in my keys. I just kept driving until I reached my small apartment on the outskirts of Missoula, 200 miles away. I quit that day. I told my supervisor over the phone that I had suffered a nervous breakdown. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end before he spoke. He didn't sound surprised. He only said, "I'm glad you made it out before the first snow, Elias. Some people don't." For a month, I felt safe. I traded the silence of the mountains for the noise of the city. Honking cars, arguing neighbors, the hum of the TV. No more creaking floorboards, no more whispering radios. I truly believed I had left them behind on that ridge. Until tonight. Last night, I woke up because my apartment was freezing. The heater was cranked to maximum, but I could see my own breath in the dark. I walked to the kitchen for a glass of water, and my heart stopped. There, sitting on my desk under the dim glow of the streetlights, was a book. The Daily Log. The same heavy, leather-bound book I had left, locked in the oak drawer at the top of the mountain. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't brought it with me. Yet, here it was. With shaking hands, I opened it to the last page I had written. Beneath my final question, there was a new entry. It wasn't written in ink. The words were formed by pine needles and flakes of dried grey skin pressed into the paper. It read, "Thank you for opening the door. Your apartment is much warmer than the tower." I froze. My front door was double-locked. My windows were shut. But in that absolute silence, I smelled it. The suffocating scent of rotting fur and funeral lilies. The smell wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from right behind me. As I write these final words on a scrap of paper, I realize the radio was right. Once you give them a name, they own you. And they don't need the mountains anymore. They found a better home. Open the closet, Elias. We are still cold.